Chapter 49. I wish I could say the next minute and a half was eventful, but it wasn't. I didn't seize and convulse on the chair, scratching and tearing at the air. There was no gnashing of teeth and clawing at Dr. A's face like a crazed beast, though at this point I was beginning to like the idea. Nope, there was none of that. Just the unyielding, slippery cold of the serum as it flowed through my body, searching for something I prayed it did not find. Dr. A pressed her watch to stop the timer. She moved the blue tape and cotton swab and tossed it in the trash bin behind her. "Looks like you're clear," she said. I rubbed my arms with my hands to get the warmth back to my limbs. "Don't worry," she said. "The cold goes away after a few minutes." She smiled and placed her hand on my knee. "How would you know?" I said, reacting to her touch. "It's not like you've ever had to—" She lifted the sleeve of her white lab coat to reveal the puncture wounds on her arm. She lowered the sleeve after I saw the needle scars. "Trust me," she said. "I know all too well." "What happened?" I asked. I had not expected that. Had she contracted whatever it was that Zoe had? Is that why she kept me locked up and secluded? She had several bruised marks on her arm where needles had been inserted into the veins. Marks like those only came if you were a user, or had a need to puncture yourself numerous times a day for a long period of time. I couldn't help but wonder what it was. Human trials were always a touchy subject, and it took years before the government, at least before the war, would ever allow an organization to test humans. Had she bypassed this bureaucratic red tape to see to it that her serum was tested sooner? Had she administered the first human trials on herself? That would explain one crazy eye I failed to notice before, but found myself unable to stop staring at. It glared at me creepily, while the other performed customary eye things, like looking. "Let's just say we've come a long way from where we started," she said, "and that's why we need your help." Her voice managed to pry my unnatural obsession with the eye away just enough for me to finally look away. I stared at my hands to keep from looking again. "My help?" I stuttered, looking at the lines on my palms. "What can I do? I don't even know anything. I'm just a—" "You're a divine," she said in my stead. I couldn't help it. I looked up and that eye was waiting for me when I did. How did she know? The doctor unlatched the chains holding my ankles and tossed the metal rings to the side. They slid noisily along the floor. For a moment, I didn't know what to do. Was it a trick? Was this another test to see how I'd respond? Had the serum truly done what she claimed it would? And had it actually not found any contagion in my body? I probed for the mysterious voice in my head, but it was silent. She held out her hand and I grabbed it. I nearly tumbled right to the ground the moment my head went vertical. The blood quickly rushed to my lower limbs and left me wheezy. The doctor held me with her arms. "Take it slow," she said. "Your body is weak and needs to acclimate." She helped me to the door leading out of the biodome and swiped her badge below the sensor. She pressed in the numbers 8614 on the keypad, and the door hissed open. Send soldiers were standing there along with Dr. B, whose face was even more solemn than before. His eyes were dark globes. I tried to smile when I saw him, but he shifted his gaze the moment he saw me. I knew I shouldn't have licked the plate. Two Singe guards took me from Dr. A and wrapped my arms around their shoulders. I felt weightless as they lifted me off the ground and carried me down the hall on the heels of the doctor. Andrew fell behind the guards and I could not see him. I tried to look back to make eye contact, but the world started spinning the moment I turned my head. I swiveled my head forward and tried to maintain my gaze on the back of Dr. A's swishing coat. My chest rose and fell as I took in deep breaths to calm the nausea sweeping through my stomach like a stampede of parasites. "Lay her down here," Dr. A ordered the two guards carrying me. They set me down, but one of them held my waist to keep me steady. "I'm fine," I said, batting his hand away. He looked at Dr. A and she nodded. "She's fine," she said. "That'll be all, gentlemen." "Roger that," one of them said to my left. They paced down the white marble hallway in single file. I watched them depart, feeling my last chance of escape slipping away with each footfall. My attention was pulled away from the guards in the long hallway of glass with a rush of cold air. It swept over my side and my face. I shuddered and wrapped my arms around my chest instinctively. I turned to see Dr. A entering a new entrance that had materialized out of the wall. I hesitated, deciding whether I should make a run for it now that the guards had left, Dr. A was already in the room, and Andrew refused to look at me. The white hallway loomed like a luminescent road to freedom, glistened in white pearls, except they were transparent glass tiles reflecting the white orbs above, and the hallway of escape zigzagged so many times I'd be lost before I even made it to the first intersection. My mind was heavy with the weight of the ocean weighing down on my shoulders, and the inevitable realization that I may never see the gray sky again. I sucked in a breath, pushed my shoulders back, and entered behind her. Out of a blizzard of fire and death I go, I thought, and into the black void of the unknown. Andrew stood in the hallway chewing on his nails as the door hissed closed behind me. The moment the door shut, the bolts sealed with a loud click and darkness prevailed. All right then, let it begin. I waited for my eyes to adjust to the darkness of the room, then saw Dr. A walking along a dimly lit pathway through columns and rows of large glass cylinders full of liquid. I followed the blue trail after her. The farther in I went, the colder the room became. My sinus cavities burned as the hairs leading up the nasal passage froze. Frothy wisps of white smoke puffed from my lips. My arms were tight around my sides. I rubbed my hands back and forth frantically for warmth. Why was it so bloody cold in here? The glass cylinders closest to the entrance were empty. But as I trekked further into my bleak fate, the glass aquariums were filled with other sources of life. Life I had thought rendered extinct by the nukes and radioactive fallout. It wouldn't be until later that I learned we were walking in a freezer. I stopped at one tube that caught my eye and pressed my face against the glass. My cheek burned from the frost that had gathered on the glass, but I ignored the pain. The ape hung suspended from life support beams with cords strapped to its arms and legs, and a mask secured to its face within the aquarium. A screen outside the tube flashed its vitals. I walked to the next one and found it writhing with sea snakes. They swam around in the blue liquid, unperturbed by their enclosure. This tube also had a screen outside the glass monitoring their vitals. As I walked along the lit path, my heart grew heavy and the breath in my lungs gradually receded from my gaping mouth. The urge to flee grew as the panic set in. There was no way I was ever leaving this place alive.